Hello, everybody, and today I'm here to review Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 6 The Lost Missions. So, I've been procrastinating a lot with reviewing The Clone Wars, but I'm here to review it today. So originally this was technically the last season of the show because after Season 5, it was no longer airing on Cartoon Network because Disney was buying Star Wars at the time, but they've already made a bunch of episodes, and so they decided to put the Clone Wars on Netflix originally. But when Disney Plus came around, it was no longer on Netflix, and now Star Wars: The Clone Wars is on Disney Plus to this day. But we're here to talk about Season 6, and I gotta say, I do like Season 6, but I also wish they did a lot more with Season 6. But there are some good arcs in this season. There's some I'm alright with. But let's talk about it. So the first arc is the arc with Fives. The Clone Conspiracy. This is where one of the clones, while Anakin is leading a group to take down Admiral Trench, one of the clones named Tub, who we saw in the Pong Karel arc and the other arcs, the 501st, he actually snaps and he actually kills Jedi Master Tiplar. And her death is shocking because we weren't expecting that at all. A clone who goes Order 66 mode early, and we're gonna find out why. But this shocks Fives and Anakin, and they're wondering what's going on as the clone is starting to get delusional, talking by saying just good soldiers follow orders, and he actually almost attacks one of the other Jedi, who's the sister of Tiplar, and she, fun fact, she actually dies in the Darth Maul's son and Dathomir not long after this episode takes place. So yeah, it's really bad luck for these two sisters. But back to the episode. So they're trying to figure out what's going on with Tub. But unfortunately, Admiral Trench manages to report this to Count Dooku, who is speculating what's going on with the clone. So he has to cover his tracks. So that he manages to send droids to kidnap Tub. And it leads to Anakin, Fives, and Rex to go find Tub after he was actually supposed to be transported to Kamino. But the three of them managed to go onto this shipyard where a bunch of battle droids are there, and they managed to take out the droids, try to figure out what's going on and why do they want Tub. But it's already too late, as they now have to take him to Kamino, and that's what they do. But Rex is forced to leave and to go back to duty, as Fives is forced to stay on Kamino because they believe he could be a contribute to this, as it believes that it's actually a virus what caused Tub to snap. But the Kaminoans are actually hiding something. They actually know what's going on with Tub. It turns out the clones all have inhibitor chips, which cause them to actually go on Order 66 mode. It's basically Fives trying to figure out what's going on, as he is taking out his own brothers, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. He teams up with the droid AZ, who we later see in the Bad Batch, and his dynamic with Fives is adorable. I like that part of the episode. But once they figure out what's inside Tub's head, Tub unfortunately dies. Yeah, I wasn't expecting Tub to die, but his last words are like, the war, the nightmares are over. But Tub dies, and it leads to this whole goose chase for Fives against Shaak Ti, as he's ready to get his inhibitor chip removed, and that's what he does. And it turns out his is normal, Fives, but Tub's, his is decaying. And that's the reason why Tub went Order 66 mode, because his malfunctioned early, and that's what led him to kill the Jedi. But what happens next after Fives is ready to show the evidence. He is forced to be taken back to Coruscant after he finds out what happened. But it leads to Fives going to Coruscant and meeting Palpatine. And we know that ain't going to go well. And they actually show the evidence. But Palpatine tells everyone to go away, as we do know what Palpatine was really doing. He was really just revealing the Fives, what his evil plan is. The reason why the Jedi and the clones are believing that, like, the reason why they have inhibitor chips is because just to keep them from acting out. But the Kaminoans actually drugged Fives to make it look like, because he had no inhibitor chip, that's the reason why he's acting aggressive. And he actually treats the clones like they're not human. And like not a person, like just a lab experiment. And that's the whole, this is why the whole message behind this episode is beautiful. It teaches us the beauty of the clones, how they are human too. They have lives, they have purpose. And that's why they love in the Bad Batch, where after everything that went down, they were able to just lay low and actually have their own lives without having to be forced to go into the war. But unfortunately, Fives is framed for attacking the Chancellor as he found out the truth, and he's trying to reveal it, but because he's drugged, he can't say much. But that's where Commander Fox is said to go after Fives, and Anakin and Rex try to confront Fives, but before he could say anything, he actually almost reveals Palpatine's deepest secret, to have the clones turn on the Jedi. But Anakin and Rex, of course, do not believe him because of plot armor. But unfortunately, Fives is unfortunately shot through the chest and dies. Not really. I don't even know if he dies a hero, and that's the unfortunate end for Fives. And it's actually very sad. Fives is definitely a good character, as he started off as a encouraging clone trooper to becoming an ARC trooper to finding out the truth about the clones. And he dies in Rex's arms. You actually feel it for Rex and Anakin, as all the brothers stand over and realize what they've done. But so that arc was really good, as it shows the truth behind the clone troopers, the tragedy of the clone troopers. And some people have issue with this because they're retconning the whole clone troopers kill the Jedi because they were just ordered to. And I like the canon version, the new version of it, because it actually it makes us realize the clones were not in control when they were in Order 66 mode. But in the Legends timeline, they just did it because they were told to. And it just makes them more cold soldiers, in my opinion. That's why I prefer what Dave Filoni did with the clones. And yeah, it's retconning, but hey, George Lucas allowed it, so I don't have a problem with it because I prefer this version. But if you prefer the other version, that is also fine. But whatever it is, it's still a story at the end of the day, and they're going to interpret it, since Star Wars gets retconned all the time, just like any other media out there in this world. But anyway, the next arc of this is the Clovis arc. So Padme is sent to the Banking Clan's meeting because it turns out it's dealing with corruption. And we see the return of Clovis. And Padme does not trust him, of course, but Clovis is believed that he is a changed man who's trying to stop the corruption of the Banking Clan. But after Padme is, I think, framed for embezzlement because she's trying to contribute to trying to stop the Bankings from corruption, that's where Anakin is sent to go rescue Padme. But they're also being hunted by Embo, the bounty hunter. But once Anakin hears about Clovis, he of course is not having it. Because as you obviously know, Anakin is married to Padme, so he doesn't want Clovis to get into the way. But Padme keeps trying to tell him, no, I'm not into Clovis. I'm just trying to save the banks. But Anakin's somewhat convinced this, but they are ambushed by Embo, and it leads to this cool sled chase where they're on a speeder bike and Embo's trying to use his shield thing as a sled. I thought that was super cool. But they managed to get away with the help of R2. But what happens next in the next few episodes is Clovis is trying to make his next move to save the banking clan when he goes to Coruscant, but he actually tries to make a move on Padme, as he believes that they shouldn't be hiding their feelings, but he doesn't know that Anakin and Padme are married, and he's wondering why Anakin is so pretentious of protected over her. But when he's about to kiss her, Anakin, of course, walks in by coincidence, and he actually snaps, and he actually just starts to beat up Clovis and starts yelling, "You're a traitor." And yeah, this shows Anakin's dark side. The slow transformation of Darth Vader because he's willing to do whatever it takes to protect Padme. And what leads to Revenge of the Sith, where he ends up killing people just so he can claim he's protecting Padme. But he's really just blinded by his own doubt and anxieties that it leads to Anakin's downfall. And this is like an early start of it. But Padme decides she doesn't want anything to do with Anakin at the moment because she believes the relationship's too toxic because they can't be in a relationship if they don't trust each other. And yeah, it's very telling. But Obi-Wan actually does question Anakin about this, but Anakin is just coping by making miniature models of his stuff, since, Anakin loved creating things as a child. But Anakin is just denying it all, just saying, me and Padme are just friends. But I do like it where Obi-Wan says, me and Satine had a thing. But he starts to say how feelings are natural. So yeah, I do respect Obi-Wan for actually admitting that they can have feelings, but they're so blinded by the whole Jedi can't fall in love rule. I actually do not understand it at all. That's the one thing about the prequels I do not understand. The why can't Jedi love? But that's a different topic. But it turns out Clovis is actually working for Count Dooku. He's forced to. But the next episode is where Padme actually does meet up with Clovis, but she ends up getting captured by Clovis and Dooku, who is revealed that he's going to take the banks for himself. And he actually causes Padme to kill one of her comrades, and it leads to Anakin eventually showing up. But before that, they were getting protected by the clone commander Thorn. He's a cool clone trooper, but he dies a hero. And I do like his line where he says, "For the Republic!" And he actually gets shot to death. And that's where Dooku does show up. But once Dooku leaves, they're revealing his plan. Clovis holds Padme hostage, but Anakin shows up. And he actually manages to save Padme as this giant war is going on because of this whole banking clan situation. But Padme manages to actually fall off a cliff with Clovis when their ships get a bunch of ships attack where they're at. And Anakin has to hold both their hands. And Clovis actually decides to just let go as he dies. And Padme is saved by Anakin, and the two are still back together. But it turns out the banking clan is saved by Chancellor Palpatine and Padme. And that's the Clovis arc. So yeah, this arc was definitely interesting. It shows how Anakin and Padme's relationship was at their all-time limit because of someone like Clovis, and showing how chaos can be caused because the whole banking clan and some people don't like the politics of Star Wars, but I feel like in the Clone Wars they explore it in a certain way that makes it a little more interesting in my opinion. Some people don't like that, but that's just whatever. But anyway, the next arc is, I'm going to go over this one real quick. It's the Jar Jar arc. So, yeah, this episode I'm not really into. Yeah, as you know, a lot of people either like Jar Jar or you don't. But this is where Jar Jar and Mace Windu are sent on a little sort of Indiana Jones-like adventure where they have to save Jar Jar's lover, who is endangered because a bunch of her people are going missing, and Mace Windu's trying to do his best to interfere, but the people keep telling him to back off, but they're letting Jar Jar do stuff. But they eventually go to like this temple where the two are are like going, the like a bunch of their characters are disappearing, and they have to solve a puzzle like it's Indiana Jones. I got some like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom vibes, but it's eventually revealed that his lover, Jar Jar's lover, is kidnapped by Mother Talzin, who wants to use her spirit in some ritual, and she even explains that she's not light or dark, but she's a Night Sister. So yeah, the whole Night Sister stuff is definitely different from the Jedi and Sith, which makes the Night Sisters an interesting concept, but it leads to Mace Windu and Jar Jar coming in to save the day, and it leads to like a sort of lightsaber duel between Mace and Mother Talzin. I thought this was the original death of Mother Talzin, but it doesn't get revealed until Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, which was originally supposed to be a season 6 episode, but it was canceled and turned into a comic. But that wasn't the last time we saw Mother Talzin. So I'm kind of vaguely going over this arc since I don't really care for this one. But it's nice to see Mace Windu and Jar Jar team up, at least, since I kind of do feel their dynamic. I did like the part where Mace Windu was like, Jar Jar, I'm starting to understand you. But yeah, it was a alright arc. But yeah, the next arc is the last arc of the show, originally. So, the Lost Ones, I'm pretty sure, is where Plo Koon and the Wolf Pack discover a damaged Republic gunship where they find the lightsaber of Sifo Dyas. And we were told about Sifo Dyas in the Attack of the Clones, but they don't really explore it. But this time, they finally do, and we do find out what has happened to Sifo Dyas. As it turns out, one of his associates has been kidnapped by the Pikes, and the Jedi's investigation leads to Anakin and Obi-Wan going to the Pike Syndicate, and they try to confront the man of what really happened to Sifo Dyas. But Dooku learns of what the Jedi are up to, as Dooku decides to confront the two Jedi themselves, and some people have issue with... You know what? Let's stop talking about what people have issue with. Let's just talk about what we like. So, or dislike. I don't know. But anyway, Anakin and Obi-Wan confront Dooku. And it gets into this cool lightsaber duel, but Dooku manages to take out some of the Pikes, as he also kills one of Sifo Dyas' aides before they can figure out what happened to the man, as his associate would turn crazy because he's been locked up for so long. But the Jedi end up fighting Dooku, and it leads to a cool lightsaber duel, but Dooku, of course, escapes, and yeah, and they manage to cover up the information, but the Jedi do find out that the Sifo Dyas was tricked into creating the clone army. And that's what led to the Clone Wars eventually, because of Darth Sidious's plan. But yeah, this episode was really good because it actually explores Sifo Dyas in an interesting way, but it also eventually leads to the next arc of the show. It's all about Yoda and how he can basically find his way to restore his life after he dies. And we basically learn how the whole Force Ghost things work. It's where Yoda is contacted by the spirit of Qui-Gon Jinn. And Yoda's trying to figure out what's going on, if it's just in his head or something. And he actually gathers all the Jedi to meditate on what it could be, and they don't sense anything. When I actually like how they all gather around Yoda, but they find nothing. But when Yoda goes into a Bacta tank, just like Luke Skywalker, he hears the voice of Qui-Gon on Dagobah. And it kind of reminds me of, it's basically like, it made me realize when I was rewatching it, it's basically Yoda basically trying to find Dagobah, just like how Luke Skywalker tried to find Dagobah. And so Yoda actually convinces Anakin Skywalker to let Yoda escape, and because they're trying to protect Yoda because they believe something is up. But Yoda manages to escape with R2-D2, and the two go on a journey. It's kind of an odd choice to have R2 and Yoda team up, because Yoda doesn't seem to remember R2, but he was just pretending just so he could find a way to talk to Luke. and train him into becoming a Jedi. Yoda was pretending to be silly on Dagobah, as you know in Empire Strikes Back. But he does go to Dagobah. He does find Qui-Gon Jinn there. But he manages to get a message to go to a different world. But that's where it leads to the next episode, where Yoda meets these, like, I think these characters were originally going to be revealed to be the people behind the opening crawl of Star Wars. It turns out they're called the Whills, as George Lucas eventually would try to come up with that concept in what he was originally going to do in his sequel trilogy, but he dropped it because he was officially retired from Star Wars. But the Whills are explored in this as Yoda goes to this mystical world where he leaves behind his lightsaber with R2, and Yoda has to encounter his greatest fears. The Jedi dying, and he sees like a vision of Darth Sidious killing all of them. And he also encounters his evil twin, and he fights the dark side version of Yoda, and he takes out the dark side version of Yoda. But it's all revealed to all just be in his head as he's trying to find his immortality of, like, after he dies, he will go live on in the living force. But Yoda goes through this journey, and I just like the creepiness, like the mystical side of Star Wars, where we could see like the weird side of Star Wars and just embrace it. But Yoda eventually in the next episode, where he eventually goes to a temple where he has to confront more fears, but it is actually Darth Sidious and Count Dooku discover that Yoda is actually doing this, and so they try to use like Sith alchemy or whatever to infiltrate Yoda's vision. And that's where we get a cool cameo of Mark Hamill as Darth Bane. So Darth Bane, if you don't know, he goes deep into the Star Wars lore. He got his own book trilogy. He created the Rule of Two, and Yoda encounters this vision of Darth Bane. But Yoda eventually just says, "You are dead. You do not exist anymore." And I just love how Yoda is just not afraid of Darth Bane. But what he encounters next is a vision of a more peaceful life of the Jedi, where most of them are not dead, there's no war, and he even sees like a good side version of Dooku. But it turns out to be a trick. And Yoda figures this out as he says, "Dead are you." And he points this out for like characters like Adi Galliga, and he points out Qui-Gon's no more, and we actually do see Qui-Gon in full form instead of his spirit. And I do like how Liam Neeson actually returned to voice Qui-Gon just for this, which is quite nice. But Yoda realizes it's all a Sith trick, as Yoda then appears on a Republic gunship with Anakin and the clones, as they got a distress call about Dooku's ship appearing on Coruscant. And so they go and they figure out the two Sith Lords are there. And Anakin manages to fight Dooku, and he actually kills Dooku. But it's all revealed to be a vision as Yoda encounters Sidious. And the two actually get into a pretty cool lightsaber duel. But he actually manages to knock out Anakin, and Yoda's trying to do his best to save Anakin. But Palpatine keeps saying, "Ooh, you're going to prevent the future if you just let him die." And it's kind of foreshadowing, since Anakin was meant to become the Sith Lord. And so it's we even hear Darth Vader's voice in this episode as Yoda passes out when he tries to unreveal the hood of Darth Sidious. But we don't see Chancellor Palpatine, since Yoda can't figure out who the Sith Lord is until Revenge of the Sith. But Yoda wakes up, and he realizes his motive as the Jedi Master, as he goes back to Coruscant with R2, and he ends up going back to the Tree of the Jedi, if you saw that in like Tales of the Jedi, and even in this episode. But he talks to Qui-Gon, Mace Windu, and I don't know why I said Qui-Gon, Mace Windu and Obi-Wan about what happened, his experience, and that's the episode. So, and he also encountered the ghost of Ahsoka, as he witnesses his fears, and he also, we see like Ahsoka saying like the Jedi didn't help her when she got framed, and so that was one of other Yoda's fears. I forgot to mention that, but since Ahsoka was not in this season at all, which was unfortunate, but she doesn't appear until season 7 of the show, of course. So, but this was the original end of the Clone Wars, so this was definitely a good arc. There were some alright episodes, but overall, this was definitely a short season for the Clone Wars, as they were planning to do more episodes, but because the show got canceled, they fortunately can only come out with the ones they did make. But this was definitely a great and decent end for the Clone Wars. But season 7 is where things get really good. I definitely plan to review that on my channel in the future, so I'd give the Clone Wars season 6 probably a high 7 or an 8 out of 10. So what do you think of the Clone Wars season 6? And I plan to do season 7. I don't know when. So anyway, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you always.